Episode 1, The Rule. Don't talk about the room. When we moved into the house, Mom gave us 3 rules. No food upstairs. No locked doors. Don't talk about the room at the end of the hallway. That last one wasn't spoken like a rule. It was whispered, like a warning that had been repeated so many times. She could say it without thinking. I remember asking her, "What room?" She didn't answer, just looked at me the way people do when they want to scream. But remember, there's someone's mother instead. The house belonged to my grandfather. I never met him. According to Mom, he died with too many things left unsaid. That's how she always phrased it. Not he passed. Not he's gone. Just unsaid. The house was old, not in a charming way. Old like something that remembers what you forget. The wallpaper peeled in corners. No one touched. The pipes moan when you turn the taps too fast. And the room at the end of the hallway? We never mentioned it, even though we all saw it, even though the light under the door never went out. It didn't have a doorknob, just a keyhole, shaped like an eye, always watching. My brother Ben was 6 when he asked, "What's in there?" Dad dropped his mug. It shattered, ceramic everywhere, but he didn't move. He just stared at Ben, like the boy had spoken in tongues. That night, I heard them fighting in the kitchen, Mom and Dad, low voices, tight words, then silence, then the sound of something being dragged across the floor, like a chair or a memory. I had dreams after that, not nightmares, not exactly. Dreams where I stood in front of the door and heard someone cry on the other side, a girl's voice, soft, wrecked, and whispering the same word over and over. Remember, I started leaving notes under the door, just scraps of paper, mostly questions. Are you real? What's your name? Why can't we talk about you? They never came back, but some mornings, the notes were gone, not torn, not crumpled, just not there. Then on the 7th day, one came back, folded, pressed flat. It had 2 words, written in the handwriting I hadn't seen in years. My mother's, but younger, sharper. You asked. I showed it to her. She went pale, didn't take it, didn't read it again. She just said, "You opened it." It only needed an invitation. Then she walked to the hallway, sat in front of the door, and whispered something I couldn't hear. That night, I heard it open, just a creak, like breath catching in an old throat. I crept down the hallway, barefoot, cold air licking at my ankles. And when I got close, the door was still shut, but the crying had stopped. And in its place, I heard my own voice from inside the room, saying something I hadn't said yet. "Please let me in." Episode 2. She said my name from behind the door. The first time she said my name, I was brushing my teeth. It was soft, almost kind. The kind of voice you'd turn toward in a dark forest because it sounded like home, except it wasn't quite right. Not the sound, not the pitch, the rhythm, like someone had heard it once and repeated it from memory, close enough to fool a stranger. But I knew no one in this house says my name like that. Lena. 2 syllables, too round, too slow, like a mouth unused to speaking, was trying to stretch itself into something human. I froze, toothbrush still in hand, water running, steam curling around the mirror like breath. I stared at my reflection, but I didn't feel alone. Not in the room, not in my skin. The voice came again. Lena. This time it was followed by a knock, 3 slow taps. From the end of the hallway, I stepped out, barefoot, heart clumsy. The house was still, too still, like it had paused itself to hear what I would do next. The door was closed, same as always, but the space around it felt wider, like the walls were pulling back to make room for something larger than they'd ever meant to hold. "Who are you?" I whispered. No answer, but something behind the door moved. Not footsteps, not breath, just shifting. Fabric, maybe, or memory rearranging itself. I bent down, pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Then scratching, fingertips against wood, tracing something. A shape, a letter, then a sound like lips parting. And my name again, but this time spoken through teeth. Luna, like it had to force itself out, like the name hurt to say. I ran, not far, not fast, just enough to feel like I'd escaped something. I couldn't explain. At dinner, I asked Mom if she ever heard voices. She dropped her fork. Dad didn't look up, then asked if we could get a dog. No one answered anyone. The silence came back, heavy, knowing. That night, I dreamed of the hallway, but it wasn't empty. The door was open, barely, and behind it, a girl wearing my face, but wrong. Older, eyes sunken, smile too wide. She reached for me, fingers trembling, skin paper thin. I just wanted to say your name right, she whispered, so I could become you. I woke up choking, not on air, on syllables. One word, over and over. Lena, Lena, Lena. Until it stopped sounding like mine. Until it felt like something I had stolen, or something that had been given to me, so it could be taken back. The next morning, on the mirror, fog from the shower, but no writing, no handprint, just a single letter trace in water, L, and beneath it, a voice I couldn't see. It's the only part of you I need. Episode 3. I saw my father in the room, but he's been gone for 10 years. My father died on a Tuesday, 10 years ago. Aneurysm. Quick, cruel, final. We buried him in the blue suit he hated, because it was the only one without wine stains. I was 7. I don't remember the funeral, but I remember the silence after. The kind that hung in the hallway like fog. The kind that even the floorboards learned to respect. But tonight, I saw him, not in a dream, not in a memory, in the room, the one we never talk about, the one without a doorknob, the one that never forgets. It was 3:12 a.m. I know because the digital clock beside my bed froze. The colon stopped blinking. Time exhaled, and the hallway light turned on by itself. I followed it, because of course I did. That's how horror begins. Not with bravery, but with a hunger for something that might still love you. The door was ajar, for the first time in my life. Just a sliver. Enough to see a room that wasn't mine, but remembered me anyway. And there, standing by the window, was my father. Same posture, same shoulders, same slouch in the spine from years of regret. He was humming, a song I hadn't heard since childhood. The one he used to play on the record player, when he wanted Mom to come sit beside him. I whispered, "Dad." He didn't move, but I saw his head tilt, just slightly, like he'd heard me from a different version of this house. Then he turned. His face was soft, wrong, younger than I remembered, but the eyes, the same, eyes that had seen too much, and decided silence was easier. He opened his mouth, and what came out was not my name. Mara, my mother's name, but not her voice. It came from his mouth, like it had been stitched there by mistake. I stepped back. My breath caught on something that didn't feel like fear. It felt like recognition, not just of him, but of a pattern, of how the room didn't mimic the dead. It borrowed them, reassembled them from grief. "You're not him," I whispered. The figure blinked, smiled, a soft smile, sad. Then he stepped forward, and for a split second, his face flickered, became something else. Still him, but made of static. A memory paused, too many times. I ran, down the hall, back to my room, back to a world where the dead stayed dead. I didn't look back, because if I had, I think I would have seen him standing in the hallway, wearing the blue suit, the one we buried him in. The next morning, I didn't mention it. No one did, but Mom was quiet, quieter than usual. She held her coffee like it was trying to leave her, and when I said her name, she flinched, just once, but enough. Later, I found an old photo. buried in a kitchen drawer beneath expired coupons. It was torn in half, burned at one edge, but the image was clear. My parents, standing in front of this house, younger, smiling, and behind them, in the upstairs window, a figure, faint, shadowed, wearing the same blue suit, and on the back of the photo, in my father's handwriting. She won't remember me this way. The room never lets her. Episode 4. My little brother knows that name, but we never told him. Ben was 6, the age when imaginary friends appear. In reality, still bends like wet paper. But this wasn't imagination. Not this. He started drawing her. Everywhere. Crayon sketches on the walls. Pencil smudges in the margins of his homework. Finger paint smeared across the kitchen tiles. When he thought no one was looking. Always the same shape. A woman. Long hair. No face. Sometimes with a dress. Sometimes with no feet. Always standing just behind a door. When I asked who she was, he smiled too softly and said, "She's my whisper friend." I laughed because I didn't know that the house had already started teaching him. A week later, he said her name at breakfast, out of nowhere, while Mom was buttering toast and Dad was reading a newspaper, upside down. Evelyn. The air cracked, like something in the house had been holding its breath, and finally let go. Mom dropped the knife. It clanged too loud for such a small sound. Dad didn't move, but I saw the paper in his hands tremble. I whispered, "Who's Evelyn?" Ben looked up, tilted his head, blinking like he didn't understand the question, then shrugged. She told me, last night, from the room, the door, still shut, still knobless, still humming when the hallway got too quiet. That night, I searched the attic, found an old cardboard box, labeled in faded pen, things not to keep. Inside, a doll with no eyes, a child's shoe, and a small photograph, torn at the corner. A little girl, braids, lace socks, a smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. On the back, one word, Evelyn, 1965. I brought it down to Mom. She stared at it for a long time, didn't touch it, didn't blink, then finally said very quietly she wasn't supposed to have a name anymore. She didn't explain, just walked to the hallway and stared at the door for hours. Didn't speak, didn't move, just watched like she was waiting for something, to be forgiven. Later that night, I found Ben asleep. His bedroom smelled like lavender, but not ours. Older, the kind used in funeral homes, to keep the dead from smelling too much like truth. He was holding something. I uncurled his fingers. It was a photograph, the one from the attic, but Evelyn's face was different. Now, she was smiling, not wide, just enough to make you wonder if she knew a secret you'd forgotten how to forget. I looked at Ben. He mumbled something in his sleep, just one sentence, over and over. She says she used to live here. She says she used to live here. She says she used to. I heard a knock from the hallway, 3 soft taps, and then a child's giggle. But it wasn't Ben, and it wasn't human. It sounded like something, remembering what it used to be, before someone gave a name again. Episode 5, the photo album that keeps changing. It started with a wedding photo. Not mine, not yet, one of Mom and Dad, before the years hollowed them out and filled the cracks with coffee breath and quiet. They were smiling, hands touching like they meant it, eyes young, hopeful, but between them, just behind Mom's shoulder, a smudge, not quite a shadow, not quite a shape, but there, unmistakably there. I didn't say anything, not the first time, not the second, but on the third time I opened the album, the smudge had a face. She was in a white dress, veil down, head tilted too far to the left, like she hadn't quite decided which side of the photograph she belonged to. Her eyes were black, not hollow, just too much like they'd been drawn on by someone who didn't understand how eyes work. I flipped the page. Birthday party. Me at 5, cake in hand, balloons floating above a backyard full of cousins. And there, just behind the tree line, the same woman. Closer now, her dress dirty at the hem, one hand lifted, fingers spread like she was reaching. I ran to Mom, showed her the album. She stared, long, too long, and then said, "That's just a trick of the light." But her voice cracked on trick, like it had been borrowed from someone less certain. That night, I checked the album again, alone, in my room, door locked, window shut, same pages, same photos, except now, she was in every one. Family vacations, graduations, Christmas morning, always just off-center, always where the eye doesn't look first, until it does, and then can't look away. I tried tearing the photos out, burning one, but the next day, they returned, not as ashes, as negatives, strips of film pinned to my wall with tiny nails, each one showing her, moving closer, frame by frame, smile by smile, as if she'd always been in the moment, and I was the one who had been added later. I asked Dad if he remembered the woman. He didn't look up from his paper, just said, "There's no woman." I asked again, "There's no woman." Slower, firmer, the kind of answer you give when you're scared the question might answer back. Later that night, Ben came into my room. He was holding one of the old photos. Trembling, he pointed at her. She told me I'll be in the album next. I didn't sleep. Instead, I watched the album, left it open on my desk, lit by candlelight, and just before dawn, the pages turned themselves, windless, effortless, until it landed on a page that didn't exist before. A photo of me, taken from behind, standing at the end of the hallway, looking at the door to the room, the one we don't talk about, and beside me, her, smiling now, wearing the veil, holding out her hand, not to take mine, to give me something, a key, but the door has no keyhole, not anymore. Episode 6. Mom was crying before the room opened by itself. I found her in the kitchen at 2:37 a.m., crying, not loud, not shaking, just still, hands clutching a tea towel that didn't seem to know what to do anymore. The kettle was off, no steam, no light, only the sound of her breath, catching every few seconds, like memory hiccuping through her chest. I stood in the doorway. She didn't notice me, or maybe she did, and just didn't care anymore. She looked small, smaller than I remembered, like someone had pressed rewind on her spine and forgot to hit pause. I whispered, "Mom." Her shoulders jumped, barely, then settled again. She didn't turn around, just said, "Do you remember the wallpaper in the hallway?" I didn't know how to answer, so I said nothing. She nodded to herself, eyes still fixed on nothing. "Your grandmother picked it. She said it would keep the house from noticing us." A long silence. Then, it never worked. I stepped closer, touched her shoulder, cold, wet, not from tears, from something deeper, a kind of mourning that starts in the marrow and rises slow, like smoke trapped under skin. That was the moment the hallway light flickered, twice, then held steady. We both turned. Something in the air shifted, like the house had finally stopped pretending to be asleep. Then we heard it, the door, the one at the end of the hall, the one without a knob, the one that never opened. It creaked, once, then again, not swinging, not slamming, unfolding, like a throat being cleared. After years of silence, Mom didn't scream. She just whispered, "It's time." I asked, "For what?" She looked at me, eyes raw, empty, to remember, even the things we promise we forget. We walked together, past the family portraits, but they weren't the same. Every frame had turned to face the wall, every photo hiding itself from what was coming. Even memory was afraid. When we reached the door, it was wide open. Inside, nothing, Just dark. Not the kind of dark that blinds. The kind that waits, like a room holding its breath, for a name it hasn't heard in decades. Mom stepped forward, paused, then looked at me and said, "If I go and promise me something." I nodded. She smiled, a broken kind of smile. "Don't come after me, unless the room calls you by your real name." I didn't understand, but the moment she stepped across the threshold, the air screamed, not loud, not with sound, but with memory, all at once. The smell of lavender and rot, the warmth of hands I'd never held, a lullaby in a voice I didn't recognize, but sang in my sleep for years. The door began to close, slow, like it wanted me to watch. I reached out, but not fast enough. Before it shut completely, I heard her voice. One word, soft, certain, and full of sorrow. "Evelyn." Not my name, not hers, but the name the room had been waiting to hear. Again, episode 7, there was another me inside. I started hearing the footsteps on the third night, after Mom disappeared into the room. Not loud, not hurried, but in sync with mine. Every step I took, there was an echo, half a beat behind, like someone was trying to become my shadow. At first, I blamed the house. Old wood, old bones, old ghosts, but the rhythm never changed. Even barefoot, even on carpet, even when I stood still, I heard the step that shouldn't have come. I stopped going near the room, not because I was afraid of what was inside, but because I wasn't sure. I hadn't already let it out. On the 5th day, I passed by the hallway mirror, the one near the coat rack, the one that never quite showed your whole face. At once, and I saw her. Me, but not. Her head tilted wrong, her skin too smooth, her eyes too still. She smiled. I didn't. I turned around. No one behind me. But when I looked back at the mirror, she was still there, smiling. That night, the door opened again. No sound, no ceremony, just wide, inviting, breathing. I didn't mean to go in, but my feet knew the path. My hands didn't shake, and my breath didn't belong to me anymore. The room was different now, not empty. There was a mirror on the far wall, cracked, framed in dried roses, fog from the inside, and in it, her, me, wearing the same pajamas. Same bruise on my knee, same scar on my chin from falling off my bike at 9. But her eyes were older, and she wasn't looking at me. She was watching the door, waiting for me to arrive. When I stepped closer, she moved perfectly until I blinked, and she didn't. I reached out. She did not. I whispered, "Who are you?" She whispered back with my voice, but not my breath. The version of you that never left this house. The light flickered. The door creaked behind me. And when I turned around, she was standing there, not in the mirror, in the room, alive, real, breathing my name like a secret. She had no right to know. I waited, she said. "You forgot." Her hand reached for mine. It was warm, too warm, like skin that had been dreaming too long. "Come back in," she whispered. "You've been outside too long." I ran, out of the room, down the hallway, past the photos that had started to blur. And behind me, I heard 2 sets of footsteps, but only one heartbeat. And I wasn't sure if it was mine. The mirror in the hallway, gone, replaced by a photo of me standing in front of the room, but smiling, and underneath it, etched in dust. She came back home. Episode 8. He knew what I dreamed before I said it out loud. The first time it happened, I thought I'd talked in my sleep. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a newspaper, 3 days too old. He didn't look up when I walked in, just said, "Did the hallway swallow you again last night?" I froze. I hadn't told anyone, hadn't said a word about the dream, about how I was running, barefoot, through the endless hallway, walls melting like candle wax, while something kept whispering my name from beneath the floorboards. I tried to laugh it off. but he looked up then, eyes calm, steady. You turned left this time, toward the mirror that shows your mother's regrets. Smart, the door behind the cradle doesn't open for you yet. I couldn't breathe. He sipped his coffee. Black, burned, exactly the way she used to make it for him. How do you know that? He blinked, tilted his head, like I was the one asking strange questions. Because I dreamed it first. That night, I stayed awake, or tried to, but sleep comes differently now. Not like a descent, more like a door. And some nights, I'm not sure if I'm walking into it, or out of it. The second time, he was waiting in the dream, not my dad, but the shape of him, wearing the blue flannel he died in, smiling like someone who remembered too much, but chose silence anyway. He stood in the middle of the old family living room, the one from before the fire, even though that house burned down before I was born. "You're late," he said. I looked around. The walls breathed. The clock spun backward. "What is this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just another place the room keeps warm, for the ones who leave pieces of themselves behind." I wanted to wake up, but I couldn't, because part of me wasn't dreaming anymore. He walked over, placed something in my hand, a marble, black, swirling silver at the center. "You used to carry this, before the forgetting." I dropped it. It rolled away, fell into a crack in the floor, and I heard a girl's laugh. Not mine, but wearing my voice. When I woke, Dad was in the hallway, staring at the door. The door, still closed, still breathing. He didn't notice me, but he whispered to it, to himself, to whoever still lived on the other side. "She's almost ready." I saw her pick up the marble last night. I ran, locked myself in my room, tried to cry, but no tears came, only fog, from the mirror, from my breath, from something that didn't want to leave. That night, I dreamed again. The hallway, the door, the voices. But this time, when I reached the end, he was already there, smiling, holding the veil, and behind him, a crib, empty, rocking, softly, waiting. "This time," he said, "you'll remember what you were born to forget." Episode 9. The room started bleeding dates. The first date appeared on the bathroom mirror, fogged up after my shower, written in clear, sure strokes. August 3rd, 1987. I didn't write it. Mom wouldn't. Dad hasn't touched that mirror since Mom disappeared. Ben can't reach that high. And yet, there it was. Perfect. Silent. Fading before I could take a picture. I asked Dad if it meant anything. He stared at his coffee, then said too quickly, "That's the day we bought this house." But his hands, they trembled, and I knew he was lying. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hallway lights flickered at exactly 2:03 a.m. I checked the thermostat. Normal. But when I stepped into the corridor, the air smelled different. Oh! Like dust that remembers. Like something in the walls. Was finally ready to speak. Then I saw it, on the wallpaper, near the baseboard. A line of red. Not paint. Not blood. Ink. Fresh. Still wet. It formed numbers as I watched. November 19th, 1992. I felt it before I understood. That cold bloom in the stomach. That realization. These weren't dates from calendars. They were names the house had been calling out. Tombstones without bodies. The next morning, I dug through the attic. Found an old guest book, buried beneath linens no one remembered owning. In the back, dozens of pages torn out. But one remained, dated November 18th, 1992. It said, simply, "Guest room prepared for Evelyn. Last-minute arrangement. One night only. Evelyn." The name Ben whispered. The name the house keeps repeating. Through mouths that don't belong. She never left. Later that day, more dates appeared. One on the fridge door. One on the cracked tile by the stairs. One carved faintly into the side of the dining room table, all in the same hand, all in ink that wouldn't wash away. I wrote them down, made a list, August 3rd, 1987. November 19th, 1992. April 12th, 1999. June 6th, 2003. October 30th, 2011. Each one sent a chill down somewhere deeper than my spine. Somewhere ancestral. Owed. Inherited. I confronted Dad again. This time he didn't lie. Just said, "The house remembers better than we do." I asked what happened on those dates. He answered with a question. "Do you really want to know what was lost each time?" The door opened on its own. I did, but I couldn't say yes, because my mouth knew what my mind refused to face. That night, I had a dream, not of the hallway, not of the room, but of the walls. They peeled open like skin, revealing dates, events, moments, a wedding, a scream, a girl standing alone in a white dress, holding hands with no one. I woke up with ink on my fingertips, red, still wet, and on my bedroom wall, a new date, tomorrow. Episode 10. My grandmother left something alive in there. I didn't know her name until the house said it. Not my mother, not Dad, not even in the family Bible, where names are supposed to sleep quietly between births and burials. But the house, it spoke her name, through the radiator pipes at midnight, through the cracked wood of the staircase, through the spine of every book. I never opened in the attic. Agnes whispered once, then again, louder, until it echoed in the wallpaper, until it tasted like rust. When I said it aloud, I asked Mom once, when I was younger, why we never talked about her mother. She smiled, small, forced. She left before I could remember her. Now I know, she didn't leave. She stayed, and locked what she couldn't kill behind that door. In the attic, I found her journal, not in a box, not on a shelf, hidden behind the insulation, wrapped in oilcloth, stitched shut with something that looked like braided hair. I opened it anyway. The first page was blank. The second, smeared. But on the third, a single sentence written in shaky hand. I made something, and it still needs to be fed. The pages that followed were worse. Descriptions, sketches, things no child should find. About the woman whose blood hums inside her. She wrote about dreams that bled into waking, about whispers coming from inside her bones, about a lullaby that grew claws. I wanted a daughter, but the house gave me a mouth. It cried, and I fed it. When I stopped, it learned to feed itself. The last entry, I've locked in the room. It knows my name, but I will not answer anymore. That night, the room opened again. By itself, the house was dead silent. Even the wind outside refused to touch the windows. I didn't mean to walk toward it, but something inside me did. Inside, the crib, old, dusty, too small, but not empty, not this time. At first, I thought it was a doll, porcelain, cracked, but then it turned its head, too slowly, like a smile thawing under skin. Its eyes were black, but deep, not hollow, endless, and it looked at me the way a child looks at a parent. It's never seen, but somehow remembers. It opened its mouth, too wide, too long, and whispered, not my name, but hers, Agnes. Then it said, "You have her voice." I couldn't move. The room pulsed. The wallpaper writhed. The crib began to rock on its own. Faster, faster. And that thing, that not quite child, began to hum. The same lullaby I've heard since I was 3. The one I thought was mine. I turned to run, but the door was gone. Not closed, gone, replaced by a wall, with dates scrawled in charcoal. And one new word, mother. When I finally woke, I was back in my bed, sweating, shaking, and on my nightstand, the journal, open, a fresh page, written in handwriting I didn't recognize, but knew belonged to me. She left it for me. I left it for you. Episode 11. What happened tonight? We were all missing for 5 hours. I woke up on the floor of the laundry room. wrapped in a damp sheet, one sock on, a bruise blooming on the side of my neck, like something had whispered too hard. The clock said 3:03 a.m. Every device in the house said the same, like time had snapped, not broken, looped. I stumbled down the hall, found Ben in the bathtub, still in his pajamas, face blank. He looked at me like he wasn't sure who I was, then blinked. "It was cold," he whispered. "The room was cold." We never speak of the room. That's the rule. But tonight, the rule was broken. Not by accident, not by rebellion, by design. I found Dad in the basement, sitting in the dark, mouthing something soundless, his eyes locked on the fuse box, like it held the answers to a question no one asked aloud. When I touched his shoulder, he flinched, then whispered, "I heard my name from inside your mouth." I brought us all to the kitchen. 3 of us. No Mom, only her robe, laid neatly on the counter. Still warm, still damp, as if it had just been shed. I checked the house cameras. The ones Dad pretends are broken. The ones I'd learned how to hack last year. After I started hearing the voices again, I opened the feed, scrolled back. Midnight, all quiet. Ben asleep, Dad watching static. Mom pacing. Me, in bed, eyes open, but not blinking. Then movement. 12:17 a.m. Ben sits up, walks toward the door, stops, smiles at something we can't see, then walks out. 12:22 a.m. Dad stands, puts on his jacket, walks straight past the mirror without looking in. That's how I knew something was wrong. Dad never walks past a mirror without fixing his hair. 12:26 a.m. Mom enters the frame, but she's already wearing her robe. Her eyes are red, but not from crying, from not blinking. 12:30 a.m. Me, except I don't remember standing, don't remember walking, but there I am, feet moving before thought, hands at my side, lips moving, saying my own name, like a spell that doesn't belong to me. Then one by one, we all enter the hallway leading to the room. We don't speak. We don't look at each other, like it's choreographed, like it's been rehearsed. And then the door opens, on its own, wider than it ever has before, swallowing us, one by one, by one, by one, then static. 5 hours of it, until 3:03 a.m. The footage returns. And there we are, walking out, smiling, but wrong. Smiles that don't curl right. Eyes too still, postures too upright, like someone tried to rebuild us from memory and got close, but not close enough. I looked up at Dad, at Ben. They were watching too, their mouths open, not in fear, in recognition, like they'd seen it before, and just forgot. A knock from the hallway. 1, 2, 3. We all turned, and from down the corridor, a voice, small, sweet, "You're almost ready now." Episode 12. I finally entered the room, and I never left. The door didn't creak. It opened the way fog does, slow, soft, like something that isn't sure it should exist. Outside a dream. No one told me to go in. There was no voice, no whisper, no warning, only stillness, and that thick, aching sense that everything in the house had been waiting for me to choose this. I stepped inside, and the room breathed, not loud, but deep, like it had lungs, carved from years. The air was warm, stale, but somehow familiar, like the breath of a memory you once buried, and now must kneel to. I expected darkness, but there was light, dim, golden, like candlelight behind skin. It flickered with every thought I didn't say out loud. The walls were covered in mirrors, dozens, hundreds, each one a different shape, different age, some cracked, some dusted, some pristine, and in each one, me, but not me, the girl I was at 5, at 10, at 17, versions of me that had once stood in this house and heard something they weren't meant to hear. They didn't move. Not right away. But when I stepped closer, they blinked, one by one, until the room felt full of my own breath in other lungs. And then they started to speak. Together, softly. You've been walking in circles. Every dream was real. Every memory was rewritten. We stayed because you left us here. One version of me, older, sharper, stepped forward. She had a scar on her cheek I didn't recognize, but somehow missed. You are the last, she said, and the first. I shook my head, but she touched my face, and suddenly I remembered I had been here before, many times. Each time I forgot, each time I woke up, thinking it was a dream, and each time a part of me never left. The room wasn't just a place, it was a wound, one we kept reopening. Every time we tried to forget, and now it was full of me, of Mom, of Evelyn, of Grandmother Agnes, all of us, echoes and originals, stitched together by silence. The mirrors began to hum, low, like a lullaby buried underwater, and I understood the room wasn't haunted, it was inhabited by everything we refused to grieve. I stepped to the center, where the crib used to be, now replaced by a chair, simple, wooden, facing all the mirrors, and on it, a note written in my own hand. You made it this time. Sit down, listen, we'll show you everything. I sat, the light dimmed, and every mirror lit up, one by one, each version of me speaking, telling a story I had lived, but never remembered. The room closed, not with a slam, not with a lock, just a silence. That felt like belonging, and I knew I was home, not trapped, returned to the place where memory stops pretending and starts living. Outside the door, the hallway remained, still, breathing, waiting for the next name to forget itself